Ladies and gentlemen, beautiful people, welcome back to another episode of Pilot Talk. I'm your host. Some people call me Pilot Pete. I'm a Boeing 767 airline pilot, and we have a third guest on today's program who is also very near and dear to my heart. In fact, his first name is my middle name. So without further ado, let's get into it. Episode 3 of Pilot Talk with your host, Pilot Pete.
Airplane mode.
Fly so high, I'm hypnotized. What's up is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars and holding you. I can't see the end, but we'll see it through.
All right, welcome back to episode 3 of Pilot Talk. I'm your host, Pilot Pete, and our third very special guest is
Dad Capio.
my dad. So we had SJ, my mom, and now we have Dad Capio on the program. Dad, thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us. Not only are you my dad, but a lot of people might be able to relate to you in the sense that what certificate do you hold that a lot of my viewers also have?
Private pilot certificate,
And what year did you get that in?
1968.
1968. And you were how old when you got it?
17.
17. So like father, like son. A lot of people ask me how I got into aviation, and the story I always tell them is my dad has his private pilot's license, but you never went further than that. Is that correct?
Correct.
So it was just for like a hobby that you wanted to do
Just
it?
a hobby, right?
What was like the main drive of wanting to get your private pilot's license when you were 17?
I just enjoyed being up in the sky and having the freedom of going where I wanted to go, and being up with the birds and flying when I wanted to and where I wanted to go.
And what airport did you get your private out of?
Republic Airport on Long Island.
Yep, Republic. I believe it's FRG. Is that the identifier?
Yes.
Republic out of Long Island, because you were born and raised in Long Island. You live in New Jersey now with mom, and we're here in my New York City apartment. So thanks again for being here. I know I asked mom when she was on the program what it's like having a son that's an airline pilot flying around the world. So I'll ask you the same question. What's it like having a son out of your vantage point that is an airline pilot, whether the good, the bad, the fun? What is something that you can maybe share aside of what it's like having a son that flies airplanes?
A continuation of my dream, I guess. I always wanted to go further. I couldn't pass the eye exam for my medical to go any further. So when you took up your flying, I knew I could fly with you, and that would extend my love of flying to the next level. That was the reason I continued to push you and tag along. Every time you would fly, I would try to piggyback on your flights whenever I could.
Real cool story, actually. If you guys watched Pilot Talk episode 2 with my mom, she shared the story of when my dad and my mom were passengers on the Airbus. Even before that, I had my IOE, my initial operating experience, out of St. Pete Airport. Long story short, my dad tagged along as a passenger. You remember this story, right, Dad?
Yeah.
So we flew from St. Pete. My airline just did out and back. So it's St. Pete to, I believe it was Louisville, Louisville to Nashville, and then Nashville back to Louisville, Louisville, Tampa was supposed to be the route of flight that day. But when we got to, I believe, Louisville or Nashville, we had a maintenance issue.
Correct.
And they brought a empty airplane to get the passengers to keep the schedule on time. Getting to the point of the story, we were now instructed as the pilots and the flight attendants to ferry the airplane. Ferry just means get the airplane back to base without any passengers. Well, all of a sudden, I was like, oh shoot. Technically, I have a passenger with me, my dad, who wasn't going to Louisville or Nashville. He literally was just following me around the circuit of that day. So I had to frantically call the director of operations, get approval from the president, all this stuff. And Dad, tell the folks that they might not believe it. Where did you sit when we ferried the airplane? It was me, another captain, 4 flight attendants, and my dad. And tell them where you sat when we flew from Nashville back to St. Pete, Tampa.
Sit in the jump seat in the cockpit, which is probably, to me, safe to say highly irregular.
Yes.
But we got permission from the highest level of the airline. As long as we didn't advertise it, he gave us permission to let me sit in the cockpit and on the jump seat in the Airbus A320.
Yeah, it was very unique, very special. Just a dumb luck situation where it went from a disaster, because if you remember, I was looking up like Southwest flights to figure out how to get you back to Tampa, because they canceled the airline I was flying to get him back to his route. Started freaking out because I was like, shoot, I'm gonna strand my dad here as we ferry this plane back. And like I said, talked to my chief pilot, talked to the director of ops, who talked to the president, and it went all the way up the chain, and they realized, hey, this is a Part 91 flight. It's not a Part 121 flight with paying passengers. So like my dad just mentioned, he got approval to sit in the flight deck of the Airbus on my IOE. Once in a lifetime experience. Definitely something that won't happen again. A, from the airline I fly with now, no passengers obviously, and B, just the whole, how the world works nowadays. So super, super unique. Dad, the folks are gonna wanna know at home, what was my landing 1 through 10 back at St. Pete when you were sitting in the flight deck?
My recollection was right. It's probably around 9.3.
Let's go, folks. See, I'm not just making up these landing grades. You have, my mom said 10 out of 10, different flight. My dad saying 9.3 out of 10. Pilot Pete knows how to land an airplane, so we got it to work. So Dad, out of all the model airplanes that I've purchased for you that are on your desk at home, we got the MD-80, Airbus A320, the Airbus A321, and the 767. There's 4 of them. Which one's your favorite?
767.
767, just because it's the biggest, or what?
No, it's just more complicated and more interesting.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. All right, now it's time for the portion of the show where my guest gets to ask Pilot Pete an aviation pilot travel question. Dad, even though you're a pilot and you know a lot more than the average person, what's a question or something that you don't maybe know 100% the answer to, or you're curious of, or maybe that my audience might want to know?
Well, you mentioned on some of your weekly vlogs, you get to break the ice sometimes with the captain operations before you board the plane, going over things like weather en route and the routing of your flight. One of the things that I miss is that I would like to see more content in that area where you would actually go into a little more detail and say, we're going to take this route because there's weather related issues if we go this way, or this is the fastest way to go, or turbulence or something. I'd like to see more content on why a certain route is selected for each flight.
Well, I'll answer that question now. I mean, we're in charge ultimately of where we go, but we get a flight plan brief from our dispatcher. So our dispatcher is looking at all of the scenarios that you just mentioned: weather, turbulence, ride reports, air traffic control flow patterns. Obviously, the airlines and the pilots and the passengers want to go as direct as possible, right? When we fly from Newark to LA, we want to do a straight line and get there. If there was no weather, there was no turbulence, that all sounds great and dandy, but a lot of the times it has to do with air traffic control flow. So when you're leaving New York, there's also planes leaving JFK, Newark, Teterboro on the private jet side, airplanes coming from Chicago, obviously, Florida, and they all have to get vectored into this small area. So there's pretty much these, not built-in routes, but ATC preferred routes. That's the best way they can keep track of all the airplanes trying to get into busy, densely populated areas. So a perfect example is when I fly, a lot of the routes I fly, Memphis to Newark, you'll notice as I'm leaving Memphis, we're going north and almost going up towards like Detroit area, picking up an arrival over Western Pennsylvania, and then coming into Newark and not just going straight. The reason being, straight from Memphis to Newark would be going through DC's airspace, Philly's airspace, Baltimore's airspace. It's just too packed. You could file that way. You can say, hey, ATC, this is where we want to go. This is how we want to go. They're almost going to deny it every single time and say, we know where you want to go. They ultimately have the discretion. They'll tell you where we're going. And that's because because, hey, in order to keep all these airplanes flowing and not to get it all just bunched up at the last point, we have to get them 200 miles out on these specific tracks in order to flow them into Newark. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's usually a lot of the times. Granted, weather, like you just mentioned, weather, turbulence, other factors might direct us one way or the other, but 9 out of 10 times, an airplane has flown Memphis to Newark 1,000 times in this last year. This is the route that we're always gonna fly from Memphis to Newark, I should say, because ATC prefers that flow. So that's normally what it is. And again, we're not the ones pre-planning it. Shout out to all the dispatchers we have at my company and all the airlines around the world. The dispatchers are the ones planning that for us.
It can't be just one guy doing.
Each dispatcher is in charge of between 5 and 10 flights.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, usually broken up domestically and international. But that dispatcher is not only filing the flight plan for Pilot Pete to fly from Memphis to Newark, he's also filing it for Pilot Dad to fly from Memphis to LA. He handles about 10 airplanes at a time. He or she. And they're in charge of our fuel burn, all this stuff. Not saying they don't have a difficult job, but they're not manually figuring it out either. Out of the databases that we have, they know that this 767 burns this much fuel, this 757 burns this much fuel, the weather's here. There's a lot of built-in tools to help them manage all 10 of those flights at one time.
Okay.
All right, before we wrap it up, special fun fact. Actually, I forgot to mention too, not only does my dad have his private pilot's license, but my grandpa, my dad's dad, whose name is also Peter, so technically he was Pilot Pete before I was Pilot Pete. Do you know what year Pop-Pop? We called him Pop-Pop when he was alive. What year Pop-Pop got his private pilot's license?
It was after World War II, so I would say it was around 1949.
Okay. You weren't born yet then?
No.
When people ask me how I got into flying, I always say the same story. I say, well, my grandpa and my dad both have their private pilot's license, but I never got to fly with them. Like I said, once you're a pilot, you're always a pilot. You got to stay current with landings and takeoffs and things like that. But one of my personal favorite flights, I recently got my private pilot. If you remember, we took out of Lincoln Park. We flew to Oxford. Is it Oxford, Connecticut?
Yes, I believe so.
Oxford Airport, we picked up my grandpa, and then we flew Oxford to Block Island, Rhode Island, which is like a little island off the coast of Rhode Island in like kind of the Nantucket Martha's Vineyard area. And it was 3-generation pilots flying, which was really cool. It was my grandpa, my dad, and myself. And I think the 3 of us really enjoyed that day. That was
Right,
one.
it was a Cessna 172.
Yep, Cessna 172. And I think you flew in the front there, then Pop-Pop flew in the front to get to Block Island, and then we dropped him back off, and then you and I flew back. It was a pretty special day that I know I'll remember forever. I believe you have the picture in your office at home of the 3 of us, so that was super cool. But another fun fact about my dad, he's been to all 7 continents in the world. Checked off Antarctica a bunch of years ago with my uncle, and they visited Antarctica. What was your favorite part of Antarctica?
Penguins and the icebergs and the fact that there's no humans, a few ice mammals, I should say.
I know you're glad you did it, but is it worth the price of admission? Should everyone do it, or it was...
No, it's an expedition. It's not a cruise.
It's intense.
Yeah, you have to be physically fit and up for some hard days, changing temperatures, and it's a rough expedition, to say the least.
Fair enough, fair enough. Only if you really, really want to go. But Dad, thanks for being on the program. Thanks for coming along to Pilot Talk. Last question for you is, out of all the 7 continents that you've been to a bunch of countries, where's some place you haven't been that's still on the bucket list that you want to go see, a site or a country or a city before it's all said and done?
I think I've covered my list pretty well.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. As always, folks, I hope you enjoyed the video. Comment below who you want to see on the next one. As always, be safe, fly safe. We love you. Any last words for him, Dad?
Fly whenever you can and enjoy the sky.
We'll see you on the next video, guys. See ya.